Awesome. Welcome to the Shop Talk Quinny podcast. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Yeah, perfect.
Fantastic. So I'm excited about this. You guys popped up on my Instagram not too long ago. Really energetic, really passionate about what you do. And today I'd love to get more context, not only for myself, but also for the people that are going to be listening to this, who you guys are, what you're all about, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into your journey. So why don't you guys start by introducing yourselves, maybe where you're from and what you guys do.
Would you like to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
So Jeff Finney. So I'm originally from the county. I moved here when I was, I think, 12 years old. Grew up here, moved away, and recently, within the last term of COVID, moved back to the county, actually to the home that I grew up in.
And just on a side note, Jeff and I have been together for 10 years, and we also we took advantage of COVID to get married.
Congratulations.
So we got married in August, and Jeff and I, we knew each other from high school. I grew up in the county, and again, same story. You move away, and then you get the opportunity to come back as often as you can. And now, it's the silver lining when it comes to COVID. We've had the opportunity to come back here and kind of make the roots a little bit deeper and still do our day jobs.
Yes.
But we've been able to focus on, as you said earlier, our passion, which is yoga.
Love it.
We did our yoga teacher training, I guess about 4 years ago now.
Just over, yeah.
And, initially it was just for our own self-development. We had our own yoga practice, and we were approached by someone to look a little bit deeper when it came to becoming an instructor and a guide. And it's just something that really flourished. I think I'll speak on behalf of Jeff, for both of us. And it's something that we were able to do together, and we've been able now to expand it even further. We were teaching at a studio in Whitby, which is where we were living. And then moving here to Picton during the time of COVID, we were approached by many that had been part of our practice, part of our community in Whitby, to continue what we've been doing. So we moved it online, and then we quietly opened our home studio in October of 2020. We're now back to just, of course, focusing online, but we've got a great space. It's got great energy, and we feel really good about it. And we're just solidifying plans for when we're able to reopen. But in the meantime, it's online and continuing to expand that community.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm very interested to hear, what made you decide specifically on this area? What was it that drew you here to the Bay of Quinny?
Well, I think it's, first and foremost, it's what we knew. So we grew up here. We graduated from Prince Edward Collegiate Institute. I think we probably would have stayed if there'd been the opportunity then, but the county was very different then for those leaving high school and looking to expand their education and their lives. But I think for both of us, there was always that yearning to come back. And there's an energy here, there's a feel here, there's a sense of community that is just, it's a wonderful partnership when it comes to yoga. Yoga is all about community and expanding relationships. And that's something that once you've been an inhabitant of Prince Edward County, that never leaves you. It's just part of who you are. So it made sense to bring what we've learned and what we can give back to where we grew up.
Yeah, and you don't get that sense of community in the city, right? As much as you develop that close relationship with clients and students and practitioners, you still don't get that feel of community like you do when you're back home in the county.
Totally agree with you there. And talk about your ideal client. When you think of the perfect individual, for what you guys do, what does your ideal customer look like?
It's the one who says, I can't do yoga. Because the person who thinks that they can't do yoga has this preconceived notion of someone who does yoga is, primarily female, tall, bendy, young. And realistically, we want to do our very best to bring yoga, which is functional fitness. It's movement mobility. to enhance people's lives. So I enjoy the people who are like, no, that's not for me. Because then with a little bit of time and effort and understanding, we can find ways to bring yoga to them in a way that makes sense to their body. Because, there is, again, this notion of it should look a certain way when I'm in a posture, a pose, an asana. And yeah, maybe it does look like that for someone else's body. It doesn't mean it looks that way for every body. So we find modifications and way to fit it into their life, to make their life more fulfilling and easier.
I love it. Jeff and Janice, talk to me about, you talked a little bit earlier about, quietly opening in October, November, and then having to go back to, an online space. How is that? Talk to me a little bit about how that transition is, and how are you finding and navigating an online space while doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I think, opening up the studio in October gave us the opportunity to see some people face to face that, we've only been seeing them online. So we actually had, we were operating with a couple of with some locations within the county. So we did yoga outside all summer long. We worked with Carlo Estates. We worked with Sand and Pearl. And so we developed all these relationships. And opening up the studio gave us an opportunity to invite them into our home, invite them into this studio space. And at the same time, we were still offering that online presence. So we were able to marry the two together and have both people in studio practicing along with people online. And then really the shift from practicing in studio back to online again, we had already developed these relationships, and we basically offered the exact same experience we were offering, just nobody actually here in studio. And it really helps everybody understands the why, right? If we had to do this from a perspective of we just didn't want people in the home, that would be a more difficult sell. But with everybody understanding how things are operating online today, moving from the split online and in studio to permanently for now, just online, I think it was an easy move, and people appreciate the flexibility.
I think that's super, super key, Jeff. And I love that you brought that point up, because I can already tell from the tone of your voice when you're talking about this, like you guys were well prepared for what was coming down the pipe as far as like restrictions and what us as businesses are not able to do at this time. And it seems like it was a gradual, shift and change, but it was one that was well planned out. So now you're going online, but you're going online, as an extension of something that you were already doing. You already had both options in place, and now you're just picking one to move with. What gave you the intuition to say, you know what, this is the direction that we have to do in? I'm looking to bring value here to our listeners, because I think there's a lot of people that think about it. There's a big difference between, dwelling on what should I do, what shouldn't I do, and actually executing on it. What was the proverbial needle, moving of the needle for you guys, and from that perspective?
Well, I think when it comes to yoga, there are a lot of practices in yoga that if there had been the opportunity to already do from home, I think a lot of people would have taken advantage of that in the past. And it's, there's always been yoga available on YouTube. There's always been sources and resources that people could have gone to. But I think when you have a relationship with people and when you've built that community is key. Energy is key. And that's a hard variable to pick up on when it's online. But when you start to know these people, however you develop the relationship, it's one that you can continue building that community and inviting others in. And I think for us, it's, if people are practicing from home and they see that opportunity to do so, they may do more. Because let's be honest, there is an effort at the end of the day if you're thinking, I need to go home and have dinner and pack my bag and go to the studio and do a practice, and then it's going to be cold because it's the middle of winter, and then I have to go home again. But if you're home,
I love working from
your
home.
Space,
yeah,
you do your practice, and in a lot of cases, at the end of our practice with Shavasana, it's like, cover up with a blanket, stay where you are. No one will know where you are. Just expand your Shavasana as long as you can. So I think that's a big plus to this whole opportunity. And I don't know that we'll ever go back to strictly being in studio. When we practice outside, of course, we may look into live streaming from nature and bringing that into people's homes if that's something that they're interested in doing. But as we go forward, I think it's something that we'll just continue to offer the energy of those who are in studio and transporting that to those that are practicing from their home.
And I think also, moving from in studio to online and having that flexibility, I think we're always looking at other opportunities. So it's not just in studio and online. We also partner with other locations. So for instance, in the summer, going to Sand and Pearl and DeCarlo Estates. We've also partnered with Jeffrey Scott in town here in Picton to do yoga from their store. And it's just looking at and continuing to look at all these partnerships and expanding that community beyond just the simple yoga class and taking it out into the community.
Well, that definitely speaks to, who you guys are and how you guys adapt to different situations. Like, is that something that's just been embedded from you? Like, I'm really curious to hear more background. Obviously, as human beings, every day we're faced with difficult situations. What experience did you have, or what moment did you face where it was like, what, I'm gonna continue to have an attitude of just looking at, what can I do instead of what I can't do? A lot of people like to dwell on what they can't instead of going towards what they can. Where does that come from for you guys?
Well, I think from a couple of different areas, let's say. So number one, my initial background in the working world is retail. So in order to be successful in retail, you had to be different. It had to be an experience. And no pun intended, you had to think outside the box. So
Right.
I think that was an area that helped, especially from running a business and looking at the metrics that you need to measure. But from doing things differently, it's the level of customer service and it's collaboration, because there, in Whitby in Toronto, you can very easily in a block touch many different yoga studios. You need to make a difference, and I think for us it's collaboration. I think for us, it's the level of customer service that we provide. One thing that I try to do after every practice, within 24 hours of that practice, is check in with everyone who practiced with us. See how they're feeling, see if they had any questions. Because again, that relationship is important to me. And I think the last and most important for me anyway is being genuine. What you see is what you get. And I think that goes a long way, especially in yoga. Yoga isn't just about the practice. It's not just about the poses that we do. There are a lot of other pieces when it comes into yoga. And part of that for me is just being who I am and being that person every single time. And I think that energy is received. I'm not going to be the right guide or instructor for everybody, let's say, but for those that the energy is reciprocated, I think there's a really good fit. I think that's important.
Totally makes sense to me, Janice. And I love how you mentioned that you come from a background of retail. I myself come from a background of retail as well. And the most success I ever saw in that industry was built around the relationship. How much did you care for the end consumer, your client, coming through the door wanting to buy something? How friendly were you to them? Did you talk to them about stuff that wasn't just what you were trying to sell? How are they doing? Things of that nature, like actually caring for the human being. And that set me apart as a salesperson in that role. I didn't even call myself a salesperson. I called myself the relationship guy. And
Right.
and to this day, I'm probably the least technical person in my company, but I am one of the if not the most relational person in my company. So it totally makes sense from my perspective. And I love how you touched on that background. Like, and to go back even further, like, was it like, were you raised this way? Was this something that was like instilled in you, or was this something that, you had to experience for yourself and then learn from?
So I think it's a bit of both. I think we were both raised in that way of respect. And I think you see that every day, and people, to your point, complain about that every day. You know, you go into a store and you don't get recognized, you don't get waited on because of how you look or how your appearance. And being raised in that manner, you have that respect for people. And I think as we grow up and go through our experiences through the city, you do get this very much of a feeling of people don't care, right? It's all about themselves. And I think taking our, you know, growing up in the county and how we were raised and bringing that back home again and really caring about the people, because as Janice said, our target audience really is those people that don't think they can do yoga. And we have to keep touching base with them. How is it feeling? You know, what working for you? Because as Janice said as well, yoga isn't the same for everybody. So you may not be bendy, she may be bendy, and you have to figure out what's right for them. And you can't do that without touching back with them and getting that feedback.
And I think too, you know, my greatest experience is just based on growing up in the county, knowing so many people, you know, the church life, teaching Sunday school, you know, having what felt like at the time so many contacts in high school, but now realizing that there weren't that many people in our high school. But the relationships that even were developed then that are still strong in both of our lives today, you know, and that goes such a long way in knowing that there's a support system not only for us, but then it expands out to other people. So I think that the values and I think the level of integrity that our parents brought to us, and there's a great similarity between parenting styles, as we've now come to find, that it just meshes with who we are and what we hope to bring to others.
Totally agree with you there. And I love how you mentioned like the church background as well. Like myself growing up in the church, still heavily involved in my church community and things of that nature. And, you know, definitely looking, part of the reason why I asked around, you know, the question of like, you know, was that something that was instilled in you that you grew up with from parents or you know, mentors, what have you, is because that's a huge thing that resonates with myself, you know, coming from a background of people that taught me things like integrity, you know, how to treat other people, things of that nature. So that's really, really neat. And I find too that it certainly helps to create a great and healthy perspective around how to navigate through these difficult times.
Mm-hmm.
I can't count how many times I've gotten the phone call, somebody's crying on the other end. You know, people going into bankruptcy, just or not doing anything because they just don't know what to do next, and they're scared to touch anything or do anything. So what would you like, what's a piece of encouragement that you could give to somebody who's in that place? They don't want to do anything because they're just scared and they don't know what's to come next. What's something that you would say to that individual?
Well, you know what, I think it really depends on that person. And for me, it would begin with a dialogue. So just encouraging to reach out to, say it's to me, reach out to someone that they have that comfort level with, and know that they're not going to be judged when they bring forward how they're feeling or what their thoughts are. But instead knowing that that person is going to listen, number one, and then number two, provide support. And then from there, offer advice as it makes sense to that individual, which, you know, maybe it means having a nap in the afternoon, drinking an extra glass of water, eating a healthy meal, or taking a walk around the block. So there are a lot of little things that we may not feel like doing. And, you know, it's not all rainbows and unicorns for us either. There are days that are a lot more challenging than others. But knowing that I have Jeff that I can go to, and he's going to do those things. He's going to listen, and he's going to non-judgment, and then he's going to offer advice. So I think those are things that it doesn't cost any money, but if someone's able to just reach out to that person that they know they can always count on, that's going to go a long way.
Yeah, that trust in the relationship with anybody is key, and being able to be very truthful and honest with people about how things are and what even small changes you can make. I think it helps immensely, but it's building that level of trust, and you get that with the support that you give and being honest.
And you guys certainly take your own advice, and you know, you guys reached out to us, and certainly we were excited to have you guys on our podcast. Like, what what made you want to reach out? What made you want to, you know, go in the direction of coming on? I'm actually curious.
Well, we can actually give credit to Avril Ewing. I know she's been on a couple of times with you, and she was the lovely officiant that did our service for us when we got married. And I'm very happy
Beautiful.
to say that she and I have developed a friendship since, and we probably talk almost every day. So all credit goes to her.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, and it totally speaks to, you know, the relationship side of things as well, because, you know, one thing I always tell people who are, you know, asking the question, you know, why am I not breaking through on social media? Why am I not, you know, reaching the right people? And my first question to them is, well, are you actually taking time to create a relationship with them?
Yes.
Is the number attached to how many followers you have more important to you than actually having a dialogue with the people that are already on your feed? You know, things like that really matter. And I think people can kind of cut through the fakeness of, you know, people that are really more so looking for the clout and less so looking to build something that's really organic and genuine, which again, totally speaks to you guys, because that's certainly, you know, something that you guys are executing in the now. So tell me, quick, like, what is a really good, like when you're having a conversation with somebody that, you know, they've never done yoga before, it's something that's completely, you know, Greek to them. Like, what is what is your approach to kind of coming alongside them? Because, you know, obviously, like in almost any business, there's a huge gap sometimes between, you know, what the business understands and has knowledge about versus what the end consumer does. So how have you kind of worked towards bridging that gap? Because it's something that I'm really interested in pursuing and having conversations with people about, because I think it's really important, especially in 2021, to be consumer centric. So what is your approach to that?
Well, for a lot of people who say that they can't do yoga and they have this notion that they're unable to do so, it's pretty easy by saying, if you can breathe, you can do yoga. And it starts off by recommending that we sit, number one, and we talk about what they've been doing. We get a sense of what their current mobility issues or maybe non-issues are, what they've been doing from a physical standpoint. And then I recommend that we just get together one-on-one, because there's a fear of being in a group setting, even if it's on Zoom, and just getting a sense of building on layers. So starting out by you know, attending maybe one of our foundations of yoga practices, where we really workshop a pose. We talk about why we do it. We talk about how best to do it. We talk about how to modify it using props like blocks, bolsters, straps, whatever's available. And we can make sure that they have the right tools at home as well, whether they be yoga props or pillows or belts, whatever they have available to them. And then we talk about benefits, and we just make sure that we layer on in a way that we're not giving too much information all at once. But we start with the basics and then just build from there. But really it comes down to breathing. It's, you know, yoga means to yoke or to unite the pose with the breath. So one without the other, it's not yoga.
And the whole point of getting that first introduction, and what we try to do in all of our practices with yoga, we want to have fun, right? This isn't a super serious, don't anybody talk, by all means, you know, do exactly what we say. It's listening to your body in the time, and allowing your feeling and how you're feeling today, because every day you're on your mat doing yoga is different, whether it's the time of day, how you're feeling, the weather, all affects our bodies and impacts what we can and cannot do. So it's, you know, letting go of that ego part of it, telling people to have fun with it. So we laugh in classes, we joke in classes to make sure everybody's having a good time, and trying to get that relaxed environment where you can actually have fun while doing something that's so good for mind and body.
Love that. Love that. And I'm super curious around this. Like, I think this will really help people that are going to be listening to this. Like, there's a huge misconception around like how, impactful is it to actually use a platform like Zoom to do something that you guys do? Like, what has your experience been with that? And more so specifically, if I can go narrow with this question, is what has been the feedback from those who have used the platform using your services, or if you use a different online platform for it?
Well, when we first started teaching via Zoom, and we do use Zoom, I think we started back in April. At that time, our community was built of members from, Prince Edward County, but also as far west as Winnipeg. So the impact was that we were able to connect individuals in such a way that they didn't have to be within a certain radius of our studio, but we could bring everyone together and build on that community and take the way that we do things, as Jeff just alluded to those that, were not just around the corner, but, in a different province. So it's a tool that I think initially when all of this first started almost a year ago, it was one that people thought of it specifically for business purposes. I think there was a fear with Zoom, but now we're at a point where everyone's using it. And if we can use it for good, especially when, we're now at the stay-at-home order and second state of emergency, mental health is so important. And if we can use this for those individuals that live on their own, that don't have the access to get out, that don't have the opportunity to see people, this is such a great way to bring people together and move their body. And even if they just lie down on their mat for the time that we're together, there's still that energy transfer because you've come together with other like-minded individuals. So I think it's a great tool that, maybe for business purposes, we're getting Zoom fatigue, but I think when we're talking about it with this point, it's just such a great tool that anyone can use with a little bit of guiding and coaching to benefit their lives.
And we've had people join classes when they're not feeling well, and they just sit there and listen. Mm-hmm. Because we've developed this community and they've developed relationships with all these other people who they've never necessarily met before, but they've met them through this community of Zoom. And they'll come to class just to stay connected with the community, even if they can't participate in class that day. We have people that show up 15, 20 minutes early for a class because the Zoom is already set up and running, who just want to talk. And they don't have that opportunity necessarily. We've developed this relationship, they trust us, and they show up and they just want to chat for 10, 15 minutes before everybody arrives. And it gives them that connection that they don't necessarily get. So Zoom has really helped create this community in a situation where we really don't have that connection with people.
Wow. So there's no confusion. You can continue to operate and run your business utilizing platforms like Zoom that can be used. And by the way, it's not as daunting as you think it is to onboard existing clients to that platform.
Exactly. And you still have to develop those relationships because, Janice mentioned earlier, you can go to YouTube and watch yoga videos and have classes and do all of that stuff online. But without that connection, and this is really where the online Zoom classes come together, is when you have that connection, you get the feedback. You can ask questions. And, we really encourage people as we're going through classes, if something doesn't feel right, or if you don't understand, stop. We'll stop the class. Because if you're asking a question or you're confused because of how you're feeling today, chances are someone else will be there in the future, maybe there at the same time. And so it's that interaction during classes that I think really helps people, especially the community where we're looking at people that don't necessarily feel like they have done yoga before, or they're not in that area where they can feel like they're doing yoga properly.
I love that. And it speaks to, and you guys will understand this, especially considering your background, like, the age old saying, like, if you do one thing, like everything else will be added onto you. And, you know, with that, to me, which comes to mind is the relationship. Like, you know, just focus on being a person that's open to um, getting to know new people, getting to, you know, being curious about what other people are up to. And then everything else, like, you know, what that means for business development, what that means for building your brand, reputation, all of those things just naturally come as a result. But to your point, Jeff, you know, leveraging the fact that you love relationship is super, super key, I think, especially in 2021.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, guys, quickly let everybody know who's going to be watching this. Where can they find you? Where can they hit you up?
Well, there are a few different ways to find us. We have a website, serendipityyoga.ca. We're also on Facebook, Serendipity Yoga PEC for Prince Edward County. And you can find us on Instagram. We do try to post daily about all of our classes, what they are, what times they're at, and who's guiding them. We've got a great workshop coming up next Saturday, which is Yin Yoga, which is beneficial for everybody. And our contact info is there. Send us an email, send us or a text, give us a call, and we will answer any and all questions or just provide more info.
Love it. Love it. Jeff, Janice, thank you guys so much for joining the show today. Real pleasure to hear and learn more about, you know, who you guys are, what you guys do, and more importantly, just the heart behind, you know, what you're putting out into this world. So I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with my tribe, my peeps. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
You too.
Bye.